My guest this week is Richard A. Taylor, founder of Taylor House Publishing. His books include Blue Light in My Rearview, Brushes with Death, The Blood of Jesus, Son of a Preacher Man, Wrongfully Accused, Rightfully Acquitted. So Richard's extraordinary testimony details how he overcame drug abuse, alcoholism, and a criminal lifestyle. Richard details in his book, Brushes with Death, The Blood of Jesus, how his life was nearly cut short in 2008 when he was shot 3 times while holding his 3-month-old daughter. He says that that experience caused him to begin to make changes in his life. During our interview, we will talk about how he changed his life. 3 months after enrolling in college and completing his first book, Richard found himself again in a Norfolk City jail accused of rape, kidnapping, and abduction of a female acquaintance. The details of that incident are discussed in Taylor's second novel, Wrongfully Accused, Wrongfully Acquitted. After a 5-month stay and a week-long trial, Richard was found not guilty of all charges. Then, just 3 months later, he was diagnosed with 2 brain aneurysms and needed emergency brain surgery. After a 5-hour-long procedure and 10 days of recovery, Taylor walked out of the hospital with no side effects. After the publication of his second novel in 2015, Taylor found his own publishing company, Taylor House Publishing. Currently, he helps people from the prison system and the church publish their works. He uses his experience and knowledge to produce books for 4 different authors. Taylor House Publishing focuses on true inspirational self-help works that are sure to motivate people to use their hardships as motivation for success. Welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, great to be here. I thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad. Well, one thing that I think is so amazing is how we met. I was, at Norfolk. Actually, I was there in Virginia Beach to see Lavelle, who was performing at the Funny Bone in Virginia Beach. So I figured I'd do some shopping that morning. So I was there sitting on a bench, and you walked up to me and said, "Hey, I don't know how you worded it, but it was just something about your author, and that I wouldn't mind looking at your book or buying your book."
Yeah. So, and it's funny you say Lavelle. That's one of my favorite comedians as well, and I didn't know he was there, or I went into the show. But I definitely that's something I do. Go out to public places, mainly to marketplaces, malls, shopping centers, department stores, and meet and greet people and tell them about my works. And I was fortunate enough to meet you that day, and as like so many other people, you were fortunate and kind enough to purchase my book. So that's how I go about marketing my works and getting my word and about my business and my speaking and publishing services out there.
Yeah, man. I mean, I told you when you said you was an author and what I consider buying one of your books. I'm like, I'm an author too. I will show you my book and all that, but I was just amazed because I was like, he had all 4 books with him, all 4 titles, and these are not, these are books that, I have I think 200 pages and he's, I'm not. It's good to have a book, but I mean, I was like, these books are pretty thick, but it just shows that the intensity that he has, and it shows the dedication that he has as well, because I think that anybody who you got to believe in yourself. When you say, hey, I have a good product, I have something out here that I think people need to read, I'm going to get on the ground and make sure it happens. So I'm deeply impressed with that. I'm like, hey, you got to come on my podcast. We got to talk. You like, yeah.
Yeah.
And you probably like, okay, right. But I was like, I'm dead serious,
Yeah.
you know.
Because a lot of people say things like that. Hey, I'm gonna get in touch with you. Maybe come speak here, come speak there. And some people do, but more often than not, lately, people, I mean, and I understand because people are busy, people have obligations, so they may get home and forget about what you said. So, but I thank you so much for keeping your word and allowing me once again to come on your platform and highlight my experiences.
Yeah, well, I meet somebody who has their stuff together like that and inspires me, then and people do forget. And I know that I do forget. So I let me get your card now. Let me get your information right now so I don't forget. Let me get a picture of your card, all of that. And I took a picture of your title, one of your books, and I think it was the one that was wrongfully accused and rightfully acquitted. And I took a picture of it and I loaded it onto Google as one of the, I guess when in Google, when you're at a location, you can say, hey, this is the location I am. And that book got, I believe, over 1,500 views, when I put that into Google. So people out there are looking for you. So yeah, man. So you definitely, I think, have your company, your publishing company, definitely has a bright future because you're writing the kind of books that people definitely want to read, and it's definitely because of where we're at right now in terms of law enforcement and how our prison systems need reform. I think definitely your story needs to be heard. So I definitely want to get into, I guess right into it, right into how did you end up in prison, and before you talk about that, what was the path sort of that led you to that place? Because I always believe that our environment and sort of the experiences are very key to sort of the path that sort of guides our life.
Well, I started off in the small town of Goldsboro, North Carolina.
I'm from Rocky Mount, not too far from Goldsboro.
Okay. So the environment that is in North Carolina, the Bible Belt, as Goldsboro has, about 450 churches in a small town of
Yeah.
40,000 people. So, I grew up in the church. My father, was a minister who's, now become a pastor, was in one of those holiness churches where you're in church Tuesday night, Thursday night, Saturday, Sunday morning, and Sunday night. So I had the prototypical, good childhood as, two-parent home, two older sisters, got provided for. My parents weren't out in the streets and everything. So I came up pretty good. I excelled in school. I was always one of the top in my class of scholastic abilities and sports as well. And, I excelled, I would say until about the age of 12 or 13. And it was then when I started reading books outside of school, and it showed me different perspectives of history, of knowledge, of what I was being taught in school. And so I began to see that everything that I was being taught in school wasn't the complete story.
Oh, wow.
And that coupled with, coming up in the early 90s, 12, 13 years old, I was also influenced by a lot of media. And by media, I mean, movies, music, even news media. They back then, the thing that was hitting, the Black community most was, crack cocaine, drugs, marijuana, drug dealing, gang banging and things. So you had movies such as, New Jack City, Boys in the Hood, Ministers, Youth, that kind of glorified, or romanticize living lifestyle. You had music, NWA, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Jay-Z. The list can go on and on about.
Oh yeah, man. I remember the late '80s and early '90s. I remember all those, Boys in the Hood and all those movies. Yeah, it was, for me, I think I felt it made you feel like, wow, am I missing something, or am I not getting something, or
yeah, and it may be because I was so quote unquote sheltered, had strict rules, couldn't go to the movies, couldn't go to the skating rink, couldn't go to high school dances and things like that because of the church rules. That, when I finally began to hang around peers who could do those things, at 13, 14, peers who may have not had the family structure, could go out, smoke, could be home by themselves, and the parents might have liquor in the house and we'd be drinking their liquor and stuff. So that kind of said, wow, that kind of enticed me, and when I put all the onus on myself because I made those personal decisions of knowing right from wrong but choosing to do wrong.
So you were rebellious, basically.
Yeah, I started rebelling. Of course, against the house rules, but also against societal rules, school rules. When I really felt that I wasn't getting the whole story.
Okay.
So, I began smoking and drinking at 12 or 13. I was still playing sports, but I think around the age of 15 or 16, I stopped playing sports and, wanted to hang out with older people who are already deeply entrenched in that criminal lifestyle and kind of learn. And, I wanted to be, like the cool guys with, with all the money, with all the chains, girls like the bad guys, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wanted to be one of those. And, before I knew it, I actually was somebody, that I wasn't, but I really, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it makes perfect sense, and so, because your father wasn't involved in life. Now I think I saw another podcast that you were on. I think he was interviewing a young man, and you were talking about fathers that are in the home and you have that presence in the household. And I think, and I was raised in the church too. I was, born, raised in that Pentecostal, deliverance, Church of God deliverance sort of, thing. And what I did see in that was there were people who sort of followed it, which I wanted to just follow what, this is what we're going to do. And then there were people who were very rebellious because, like you said, like, wait a second, something's not adding up here. I'm looking at you telling me I have to wear this. I couldn't even have back in the day, it was a high top fade back in the day. Yeah. I couldn't have that, had to have it, cut pretty close. My sister couldn't wear, pants in church. She couldn't wear makeup. And my sister and mother would fight for over chapstick, over lipstick and things like that. It's like you couldn't have any of those things. I couldn't even wear name brand clothes. It was all a sin,
Yeah.
And so I could see that some people rebelled against that because when you cut the TV on, it's like, wait a second, you're telling me this, but I'm looking at everything around me saying that everyone, I'm missing out on all these things, and you want to be included, you want to fit in, and being raised in the Pentecostal church, you ain't gonna fit in. You're not gonna fit in because they're telling you the world is bad.
Everything, like you said, everything was a sin. Movies, they used to call it dancing music.
Yeah,
rap, R&B, all of those things, kind of alienated, us from, our peers who to do it. And in hindsight, though, I definitely understand, the things trying to protect us of, like those movies, like that. Yeah.
I'm thankful for it now. Now I'm appreciative of it now.
Yeah, so I give my mother and father credit all the time. That's where my third book, Son of a Preacher Man, came from, because it, once again, it highlights those qualities, those attributes, those morals and values that my father taught me, that even though I strayed away for a time period, those values and things always stayed with me and caused me to succeed, even when I didn't do everything right. But now, now that I'm on a different path, I value it even more, because I realized that those things kept me through those hard periods.
Yeah. I just wish they would have not put that sinful sort of view on it. I think that would have been better if they would have made it like, make us understand that, we're trying. I know I got people trying to protect me, but I wish it would have been more about being protected than sort of these things going to cause you to go to hell or something like that. Like, you know, I just wish it had been framed better. I think I would have understood better if it would have been framed in a different way, you know?
Actually go through those same things today with my 13-year-old daughter, who wants to, wear certain clothes and, wear her hair a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually caught myself being, like my parents.
Yeah.
I've taught her well enough to know that, okay, well, if she wants to do these things, and not going out smoking or drinking or, hanging out. No, just little things that I don't personally agree with, but it's actually no harm to her at the present. But I just want her to understand, okay, well, yeah, this is what these clothes mean, like that emblem on your shirt, that's what that means, like a skull and bone on your shirt, that's representing death. I just want you to know, but little nuances like that. But I had to catch myself, and I didn't want to tell her not to do certain things that she didn't understand, without being too overbearing.
Right.
And just keep a close watch on her. So I'm thankful for those things, but I, like you said, I do think things were a little presented the wrong way, or a little bit overbearing, where it kind of
it makes you want to rebel. It makes you want to, like, wait a second, this ain't cool. This ain't it. So
everybody doing it. Why can't I? That was
right. Exactly. And you sort of
they're fine, But then once again, I see the results of a lot of my peers who didn't have that guidance. Doing long stretches in jail, dead or whatever, or haven't been productive in society. And I say, okay, I see what they were trying to do.
Yeah. So being raised as a preacher kid, and having to live up to a certain standard that I think it's kind of unreasonable for a kid, especially not being explained well why you're doing it, and then that's causing you to be rebellious, and then you're becoming the very thing that you're sort of inspiring, emulating, and then that's leading you into bad experiences where now you are characterized as a criminal. So what was that experience like, saying, I'm a good kid, and oh snap, it's life is sort of turned upside down now?
Yeah. My first, I began to, in hindsight, realize, when coming up in school, I always heard the statistics. Well, 1 out of every 4 black men will go to jail. I don't know.
Wow.
Well, 1 out of every 3 black men won't make it to 21. And all of those statistics, that you hear daily, they kind of say, okay, well, that's my future.
You just accept it.
Yeah, and actually I began to, and a lot of my peers, I think, began to say, okay, well, if that's what's expected of me, that's what I'm going to do. And, it just became sort of what you think, or what you attract. That's what you want to attract. So I never remember, I was 18 years old, working at a restaurant, and I was coming home one night, and I got stopped by the police. This was the days before cell phone. I got stopped by the police soaking wet. I was a dishwasher at Texas State House. The lady, female officer, followed me for, like 2 miles, and So when I finally turned, because I had already turned past I already drove past my house, because I don't know why, but once the police we were taught, once the police are get behind you, the police are bad people, you know. And so she ended up stopping me. She pulled me out of the car, checked my license, everything was clean. She wanted to DWI test me, and she's looking at my clothes. I'm soaking wet with little food particles on my shoes from washing dishes. I'm telling her I just got off work, so I do all the tests, pass those tests. Then she calls for backup.
Wow.
Mind you, this is 12 o'clock at night, before cell phones. So this is before cell phones. She calls back up. She goes back there, talks to him. So she said, okay, we want to search your car. I'm like, why do you want to search my car for? I don't want you. I want to go home. Look, I'm tired. I got school in the morning. I literally had school in the morning. Mm-hmm. No, we're gonna search your car. So they went, tore up the car. And they went search. Of course, they didn't find anything. And so then after that, they went back and started talking again. So mind you, it's like 45 minutes now. And me as a teenager, I get restless. No, I want to go. I want to go.
And this is in Goldsboro?
Yeah, Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
And at that point, I got a little irate. No, let me go. No, I don't want to talk no more. Let me go. No, calm down. No, let me go. And then, next thing you know, it's a tussle that starts. They want to put me in handcuffs. Like, well, no, what did I do? You're resisting arrest. And what am I being resisting arrest for? So long story short, I ran around, I ran. The guy, I ran into somebody's yard. They followed me into the yard. When they came around the corner, I was just standing by the side of the house. I tried to run again. I was mazed. The officer jumped on me. And, I was arrested, charged with, a resisting arrest, assault on a official, all of those things.
So all this is trying to get home from work.
Yeah,
and your whole life is now turned upside down because somebody.
Paper,
go ahead.
My name was in the paper, in the local paper. Of course, I missed school because I had to get bailed out of jail. And, I told the story to my parents. We actually wrote a letter to the newspaper and all of those things, complaining. But of course, when I went to court, I had to plead guilty. And, because that was my first time in trouble, court appointed lawyer. I mean, we actually bought a lawyer. The lawyer, of course, works with the local DA. Yeah. So he said, well, just go ahead and plead. They're going to drop this, that, and the other. So I was given probation. But, I think that incident there just left a sour taste in my mouth. And then once again, okay, well, now I'm really solidified as a criminal.
Right.
Because, you know what I mean? So I went to court. And so now that kind of, gave me that attitude of being an outlaw. Forget the law.
Mm-hmm. Because you figure it don't work. I mean, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, and even if you're doing everything you're supposed to do and you're still treated like a criminal, then you feel like, well, what's the point in, doing the right thing?
Yes, and that's the attitude, unfortunately, I've took, or maybe fortunately, because I had all these experiences and are able to relate, my experiences to younger men on how to deal with certain areas, the path to take. But that led me into a greater mind state of rebellion.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that, because I grew up in the 90s as well. And, all those images that you just described, I saw as well, I experienced as well. And what was so, I think, so disheartening was to see a lot of, my, African-American brothers and peers, sort of kind of, saw that as a badge, like, hey, selling drugs would probably have been a good thing. But when you have society and you have the images, like you said, on television and movies telling you that this is what it means to be an African-American male, you buy into it. And so I thought there was disheartening because they were buying into it. So when all this is sort of happening to you, where, now you got a record under your belt, so when that happens, anytime you get pulled over or anything happens, they're going to see this on your record. So they already have, we already have this sort of idea about who the African American male is, a hothead, all those things come along with that. And then you got the record to also sort of stamp that to your name. And so now, and then you got a distrust for the police because you had a actual interaction and an experience saying that it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to have to deal with getting locked up, going to prison because going to jail and getting arrested, no matter if I accommodate them or not.
And I actually I moved away from Goldsboro to Virginia to get away from trouble. I think I had did a year for my third DWI with between the age of 18 to 21. I got 3 DWIs, I think, and so they sent me there for a year. I also got a hit and run. I had so many various charges that I actually had 2 robbery charges, which were eventually dropped because someone had lied on me, and I was at the scene of a attempted robbery that went wrong. So I was acquitted of that as well. But just possession of marijuana, disorderly conduct, carrying a concealed weapon without being registered. So all of those things from the age of 18 to 23. I was in a lot of trouble, but I only had to end up doing about 7 months for that all of those charges. And I began.
So with all that being said, I mean all that, because I believe life has a spiritual scheme to it, right? And you've been a preacher's kid. It definitely, God always give the hardest lessons to the best students, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from a spiritual perspective is that God is saying to you, Spirit is saying, you got to wake up here. Something, you need to wake up, because it's like when you start describing what you just, what you were just describing about, being, people accusing you of things and being acquitted and being accused and being acquitted. And this is happening over and over and over again. It's like God is saying, open up your eyes.
Yeah. Yes. And, there's a scripture that says also, he who knows the way and does not do it shall be beaten with many stripes.
Oh yeah.
I've had my fill of those stripes, and that's when I began to wake up, and that's when I moved to Virginia, because and the incident, like right before I moved, I was at a quote unquote, we call them liquor houses out here.
Yeah. Shot house.
Yeah. So we were there, and everybody was in there, and a shootout erupted inside, and then everybody ran outside, and people were still shooting, and I just heard the bullets. Pew, pew, like I'm ducking behind the car, but I can literally hear pew, pew, like and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Like, what am I doing?
Right.
So, like, I think it was that next weekend, my god brother, Terrence Thornton, I'll never forget, he was home for the holidays. He stayed in Virginia Beach. He was actually the man that you saw me interviewing with the father.
Okay.
He was the one that did, he got in a little trouble, but he went off to college. He graduated from college and went on to, go to straight and narrow. So I told him my situation. I said, man, I have to get out of here. It was Thanksgiving. He was like, all right, come on. And it was just that simple. I think I had like a clothes. I had a trash bag full of clothes, and I think my mother gave me $50 and my father gave me $50. Virginia Beach, and he actually he kind of woke me up too. He was like, Rick, you got to do something different. Like, this is not you. I'm gonna give you a month to stay here for free, but after that, I'm gonna need $300 a month for the rent, and this is this bill is due here. And so that actually taught me, and I always commend that you actually taught me the responsibility of being a man. So within 2 weeks, I had 2 jobs because I'm so excited of getting out of Goldsboro, And at the time, I thought Virginia Beach was a big city because, I mean, as much bigger.
Yeah, comparative to Goldsboro, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I was seeing all the big buildings and the bright lights and the beach, and I'm like, yes. And so I did well, I would say, for about 6 or 7 months. You know, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do anything. And I started to meet people. And I never figured I was working at Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster, it was like a big call center where people, like, 1,000 employees. So I began to meet and interact with people. And, I realized that everybody smoked weed on break and everybody partied. So my mind, once again, and that once again goes to the mindset where you really, you can take a person out of that environment, but the environment still stays within them. So I told myself, I was like, well, since everybody smokes weed, and I see that they're paying way too much for from what I would sell it for, I said I'm going to find me somebody with a large quantity of weed, and I'm going to buy some weed to start selling it to my coworkers, and that's what I started to do. And before long, I was like, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm making so much money off selling weed. I don't need a job now. And that once again led to me becoming the hustler, or the drug dealer that I always wanted to be in North Carolina. I was realizing that in Virginia, because once again, nobody knew me. I didn't have to worry about anybody telling me, nobody. And, most of them, were my age, young kids, even high school, college kids were smoking. And then I actually moved on to a harder drug, which was cocaine, which once again, I met people in the drug circle. And then one of my customers one time said, hey, man, do you have any coke? And I was like, well, I did just meet another guy who told me he sold coke. So, and once again, that I got into that foray, and, that lasted about 5 years until that incident that you mentioned happened, with me shot and robbed by an acquaintance while holding my daughter. And as you said, that was the real eye-opening experience, because once again, I was able to walk out of that hospital 2 days later with minimal injuries, but the way that the bullets went in, and the way that the doctors were looking at me, it was like, I don't understand. I don't understand. Or you're not.
So that was, to you, that was like God saying, this is your last chance. If you don't get it this time, if you don't get the lesson this time, then did you feel that?
I actually felt it when I was in the room. I was in a hotel room, and the gun was, I was like, this is it. This is it. But then I felt still a covering. So, I felt death. I literally, okay, that I'm gonna die. Like, this is it. But then, as the gun was going off, I still felt some sort of covering. And so that really, like, after that instance, I actually moved back to North Carolina, started going right to my father's church, really, faithfully. I started praying, reading my Bible, because like that was really the scary part. Like, okay, God really saved me from that instance.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get no clearer than that one. I mean, when the bullet starts passing by you and not hitting you, or, well, in this case, something did hit you, but it didn't kill you.
Yeah, but then I heard of what, like I said, I heard another one said, no, write your story. And so I immediately got up and went and sat up. My mother had a computer in her office room, and I sat right at the computer and started right from that instance. I started from the end and wrote the book in reverse to how I got to that point in life. But that was a therapy for me, because I wrote the book. It's a factual novel, but I wrote in the third person with me being a character. So as I'm writing the book, I'm able to look at my life from the outside in and really realize, okay, wow, that's where I made that mistake. That did that. What? Okay, that's what led me to this. So I was able to analyze my life and really see the mistakes and the mistakes that I made, and also the several chances I've got, and that began to give me a new fervor and allow me to place a higher value on my life. 2011, because I moved back in 2009. 2011, I tell myself, I'm working around here. I got a little menial job. I said, no, I'm going back to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I'm going to pick up where I left off.
Mm.
I called a guy from Goldsboro and bought a certain amount of cocaine. I saved up some money, so I bought a certain amount of cocaine. July 4th, never forget it. I took my car and drove up to Virginia. On the way there, I'm calling all of my old customers back, and it's funny because they were just so happy to, oh yeah, you're back. That's great. And that's how the devil. I mean, that's how it works, man. He has
welcome back.
He has it all set up for you. Turns out that I have a warrant in Virginia Beach for leaving the state of Virginia while on probation or something. And so I end up right back in jail with no bond, and they actually found the cocaine that was in my pocket as well.
Wow.
So in the Virginia Beach jail, first day I get back, first I took my daughter to the beach that day and everything. First day I get back, she's 3 years old. And I stayed in jail for 6 months until, they gave me time served, but they also extended my probation for another 8 years. But one thing stuck with me that time when, I was talking to my daughter and her mother, and she would actually bring my daughter to see me. My daughter's 3 at the time. So I'm thinking, well, she doesn't really understand. But then one day, about like 2 months before I was released, my daughter asked me, said, Daddy, are you getting out of the jail today? And that just broke my heart, and that's when I really said, okay, I am really going to do right. And upon being released, that's when I enrolled in Tidewater Community College in Norfolk, Virginia, full-time student. And when I wasn't in class, I started back working on my book, which I published 3 months later in February. And it was, it was a great experience, to come that full circle. But once again, I still had that habit, because like even when I was really deeply entrenched, I always had that feeling. Okay, no matter what situation I'm in, it's not going to end tragically. And by that, I would run with some guys from Virginia Beach, and I would be I tell them, hey, I just came back from such and such in Portsmouth. It was like, what? You were in Portsmouth in that neighborhood without a gun? Yeah, but I always carried that lackadaisical attitude, because maybe in the back of my mind I knew, okay, God was protecting me, but he also, once again, send those warnings, but also he lets you know, yeah, okay, well, yeah, I can take my hand off of you.
Oh, yeah.
Over to the reprobate, as they call it, reprobate mind. And I think when he gave me over to the drug addiction that I faced, because once again, after I published the book and soon after that, I still was going out, telling people this, telling people that, but at night I would be, with a bottle of liquor and a bag of cocaine, and then I wake up in the morning and do it again. But it was like he was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, I'm going to stick you right here in this room until you get tired of it. And actually, that I think those years from about, I think 2015 to 2018, like those were probably some of the worst years of my life, but nobody would ever do it, because whatever I did at day, at nighttime, I was was trapped. I was in bondage to alcohol and drugs. So that's where, I think that he allowed me to suffer the most. And that's why people ask me, why do I go? Why do I, go out every day? Why don't you take the time to do this? I'm like, okay, I've had enough fun, you know what I'm saying? And I wasted enough time. So that's why I want to help others who are suffering with addictions, with criminal activities, with health problems. Because as I mentioned, I did have that brain aneurysm after being accused after I published my first book, which was and the wrongfully accused, rightfully acquitted situation was with a young lady who I knew from before, who came to, who I met at the school that I was going to, that I had just published the book. I had just did a speaking engagement at the school. They had my name on the marquee, and we developed a relationship. And in that relationship, it was kind of tumultuous. And once again, I take responsibility because at that point in time, I played on her vulnerability as having just been broke up with a boyfriend and, wanting someone to be there with her. And I told her I was going to do certain things that I had no intention of doing as far as like being with her and, being a father to her children and things like that. And I actually, once again, I think, and the situation is in the book, but I can just tell you one night we had an argument. And, I said some things that were really horrible, had her crying, but then I apologized and I laid down and went to sleep. And when I woke up, she had texted her friend and said, call the police. Richard Taylor has raped, kidnapped me, and held me all night. Now I'm in the bed sleep and I get awakened by 4 police officers, taken to jail without a word, held in the cell for 8 hours until finally they interrogated me. And they asked me what happened. I told them, the whole story about, we had sex, we argued, and, this and that. And then I went to sleep. And, the officer asked me, was the sex consensual? And when he asked me that, I was like, no, this is not what's happening, And I was like, yeah, of course. And, he was like, well, that's not what she says. And so they took me to the magistrate office and, swore out all the warrants and I went to jail. But once again, that was a way, even though I did not do it, but that was a way of God once again sitting me down. But, fortunately, once again, the evidence, the phone records, the DNA records all proved that, her story was false and I was acquitted on all charges.
Thank God.
Yeah, 5 months, 5.5 months later. But once again, the stress of the trial, and I don't know if it's the stress of the trial or also got in a fight in there with this big guy who, had done 20 years. And, I don't know what made me, not run from this guy, but, I banged my head on the steel bar. So I don't know if the aneurysms came from that or the stress of the trial, because I had a headache all the way through the trial. But, like you said, 3 months after being acquitted, I went to the hospital and was told that I had 2 brain aneurysms. And the doctor said, I don't know how you made it here because one of them has already busted. We don't have time to race. Like, you have to sign this paper saying if you are a vegetable, you want to be resuscitated.
If all that's happened to you and you have your life still and you are still here in your right mind, your life is for a greater purpose. I mean, it's no longer about you any longer. I think you got that it's no longer about you. It's about if God has kept me on this planet, despite all these things, then there is some greater purpose that I'm here for. It's no longer about me any longer. It's about this reason that God has allowed me to continue to be here.
Yes. And that's why I am once again just so driven to go out every day and tell, the good news, the gospel, and my testimony of how, God saved me from these things. And also he can save anybody. He can save you, whatever you're going through. And I was never at a point that I would feel I would think that I'll be sitting here today and not smoking, not doing alcohol, not doing cocaine. I didn't think I would ever be at this point because I had been doing it since 12 or 13. So it's definitely a revelation, as you said, like my is no longer mine. I use everything that I've experienced to help somebody else who may be going through or who has lost hope. As one time I did, I lost hope. Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna get high and get high in this room till I die. Like even after the brain surgery, after a 5-hour brain surgery and 10 days in the hospital, the first thing that I did when I got back to Goldsboro, North Carolina, right out of the hospital, the same day I drove back to North Carolina with my parents, was got up with an old friend and we went to get cocaine. Now, like people don't understand addiction, but if you don't understand it, they're like, okay, I just had a brain surgery. Like I still have staples in my head. I still have, $2,500 medicine that they had to give me because I couldn't afford it. $2,500 medicine and all these medicines I got to take at an hourly basis, and I'm out doing cocaine. So that,
but I'm saying that I mean the depth. I mean, I hope what I'm hearing is that that's the depth of somebody's pain. That's the depth of your pain.
Yeah, somebody that right now though.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean that's it. That's my pain, and
to go back and look for that. You just had a stroke, and you explained to the nurse that I've had an aneurysm, and as soon as you get out from the hospital or you're released, you go back looking for that bag of cocaine. There's something where you got to look at that and say, what is going on here? Did you stop at what point did you stop and say, that question has to come up? I mean, for you to be talking to me now in your right mind, obviously you had to look at that and go, what is going on with me?
Long story short, in 2019, I was slated to get off probation in November. So that same probation officer said, hey, look, man, I got to send this paperwork in. To Virginia Beach because, he's slated to get off, so I got to send all the paperwork. When he sent the paperwork in, he called me back. He was like, hey, man, it's out of my hands. They're going to violate you because of all of the drug tests that you failed. So in about May, they came to my house and they arrested me, took me to jail, and I stayed in jail for 2 months without a bond, and I fasted and prayed. But one thing happened this time in jail that I began to look at all the older gentlemen, 50, 60, some 65, some coming there in wheelchairs, some having to take medicine and stuff like that. I'm like, if I don't stop now, that's what I'm looking. This is what I have to look for. And then I started to reflect on my life and realized that every time that I got in trouble, drugs or alcohol was involved. And so before I came in, before I went in, there was people fundraising at a Walmart, and it was called Life Changers Outreach Ministry. And the guy, they was asking for donations at the door. He handed me a flyer and he told me his testimony about the program, and it's free. And, for years, my mother had been asking me, don't you think you need some help? No, I'm all right. Because, and that, I think that was my problem too, because I never hit what they call rock bottom.
Okay.
I was never sleeping out of a car. I was, I always dressed nice. If I didn't tell anybody, like I just told somebody, that knew me all my life that, I used cocaine. You did what? Like, because nobody knew. Like I wore that mask. I wore a green mask. And so finally I was tired of wearing that mask. But I thought about that program when I was laying in jail. I told my mother about the program. I asked her to call the program. What's the entry? How do I get into it? And they sent me the paperwork. I filled out the paperwork, sent it back. They sent me an acceptance letter. Now, my initial purpose was to show that letter to the judge because my court-appointed lawyer said they was going to give me 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I was like, 2 years? I haven't been in trouble. I just have a drug problem. Well, when you make it the drug program, but that's still, you're going to have to spend a year in jail. And so, but I said, well, maybe I can take this letter to the judge. And when I showed the judge the letter, hey, look, this is a year-long program. I've already been accepted. I'm planning on going this if you let me out. Mm-hmm. Now, I prayed and fasted that God would do 3 things for me on my court date, which was October the 7th. And I prayed that he would let me out of jail that day, that he would release me from probation, and he would be favored with the judge. Mm-hmm. So the court, I had already agreed to to a 1-year sentence verbally. They came with a plea bargain. So I was like, well, I know what I've prayed to ask God for, but she was like, they're not going to give you, the best you're going to get is this year, or you can, go and get 2 years. So I said, okay, give me the year, and then I'll be off probation. So, but I got into the courtroom, and my father and my mother were there. My mother wrote a letter.
And so, what is your father? I mean, all this is happening to you, and your mother and father, who are elders in the church. How are they dealing with this? I mean, what did they? I mean, how are they coping with this going on with you for these many years?
At first, it was, I guess, shock.
Mm-hmm.
It was shock. It was like, okay, what are you doing? Like, once again, in the small town of Goldsboro, I think at 16 or 17, I started hanging out in the drug areas and standing on the street corner. So sometimes when I would get home, my parents would say, "Oh, brother so-and-so saw you standing on the, corner." Mm-hmm. Brother so they kind of, I kind of brushed it off. And at that age, I was too old for beatings. So it really wasn't nothing, that was going to deter me from it. Of course they were hurt. They would, ask me what I was doing. But, at certain times, like I said, with me getting shot at 18, I also got shot at 18 when I went to college. So I think the magnitude of the situations that I was in, like being arrested for robbery, that took it to a whole nother level as, okay, really concerned for my son. Like, I don't want him to go to jail for 20 years, or he got shot. I don't want him to die. Whatever he does is fine, long as he doesn't die. Of course, it wasn't, fine, but, it became of, okay, are you all right? You okay? Instead of, don't be doing this, don't be doing that. And of course, a lot of
so they gave it over to God. It was like, he's going to give you, turn you over to God, and
that's what they did. Prayers, especially, they came. I got cards every time I was in jail. A couple of visits here and there, because a lot of times I was in Virginia, so they couldn't come, regularly. But I got letters of encouragement. I got scriptures all day, and I applaud them for standing by, never giving up on me to this day. Mm-hmm. And but I know a lot of times that I saw it in their faces. Mm-hmm. That what is wrong with my son?
Well, so in your faces, was it disappointment? Was it disgust? What when you looked at their faces, you're going in and out of prison, going through these situations, and you got to look at your mom and dad in the face. I mean, what is it that you're seeing on their faces?
Once again, I saw frustration.
Okay.
I never thought I don't think I never saw disgust. Maybe a hint of shame here and there, but most of behind all of that, though, I really, in hindsight, I really see love. I saw love. They never stopped loving me, no matter what.
They never gave up on you.
Yeah, they never gave up on me, and this is how it came full circle, because the letter that my mother wrote, was talking about.
Okay, my father. So you were back in 2019.
2019.
Okay.
Violation hearing. So I'm in front of the judge, and, I've already, well, y'all have an agreement, the judge said. She said, yes. And the judge he looked at my file and was like, wait a minute. Why is he facing 2 years? He hasn't been in trouble. But then the prosecutor said, well, in 2014, he was charged with rape, kidnapping, abduction, and such and such. And the judge said, well, he wasn't convicted of any of this. He said, I know, Judge, but just because he was charged, that moves his points up. And the judge looked and said, well, that's unconstitutional.
Right.
He shouldn't have to pay for something he didn't do. And that was the first time I actually saw God answer my prayers, which was turning the judge's heart in my favor. It went on, and he made a comment. He said, well, I know if it was up to me, I wouldn't give you 2 years in jail. Shoot, I wouldn't give you a year. And he said that, and I was like, okay. And then he said, well, matter of fact, never mind. Y'all already have an agreement, right? And I was like, I told my lawyer, I said, no, I'm not going to agree to the year. I want to put it in the judge's hands. So my lawyer and the DA, they got frustrated because, of course, that made that day longer because they had to present arguments now. So the DA presented his argument, and my lawyer read a letter. It was started out talking about my father. He was like, well, Roger Taylor, he's a pastor. He served such and such in the Navy. She gave him a background, right? So the judge looked at me when he heard Navy, and he said, oh, yeah, you served in the Navy, sir? And I said, no. She was talking about my father. So my father's in the courtroom. So the judge starts addressing my father. Oh, you served in the Navy, huh? Oh, yeah, I did too. Where did you? And so they start talking like old friends, right?
Wow.
So he starts reading the letter again. And he said, oh, from Goldsboro, North Carolina. From Goldsboro? I'm from Greenville. Yeah.
Wow.
I went to Chapel Hill, but my mom still stays in Greenville and so they'll start, and I'm looking at them like,
what is happening here?
God is answering my prayer. So the judge looks at the paperwork. He looks at, and it stopped right there. After he talked to my mother and father, he was like, look, I don't see any reason to keep you in jail. It's obvious that you have some issues, but, being in jail is not going to help you. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to release you today on 2 years good behavior. But what I'm also going to do, because in Virginia, whenever you're convicted of a violation, they start the whole probation sentence over again. So I was supposed to get 8 more years of probation. But he said, and I'm going to take you off probation today. This thing has been going on for 10 years, and I don't think you need to be on probation. I think you need some help. But, I'm not going to keep you in jail. Just get out and do right. And so that day I walked out of jail, and I thought about it. I said, God answered those 3 specific prayers.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, okay, God. And I still had the letter of acceptance. I said, okay, I'm going to go through this program for a year. And a month later, that's what I did. And I went to that program, and it was the best decision of my life. 2000. It was supposed to be a year program, but of course, COVID hit in 2000, March of 2020, really. And that's when I left the program. I moved back home to Goldsboro, North Carolina. I went right to work on my 3rd book, Son of a Preacher Man. I also got my substance abuse peer support specialist certification because of what I learned in the program, but also I wanted to stay sober. So I wanted to know all the techniques of how to stay sober, but I also wanted to help others stay sober. So I started teaching a peer support specialist class in October of 2020. And I did that until July of this year, when my obligations for my books and everything became too much for me to teach the class. But I did that for 9 months, and I published this book, which is the latest book, Blue Light, My Rearview. I published that in February, and ever since then, I've just been going out publishing. I'm working on about 3 other books for other people, getting letters from prison, getting. I've spoken at some juvenile prison facilities already. Work with some law enforcement training centers in Greenville by it's called de-escalation training, where former inmates come in and talk to correctional officers and prison guards about inmate humanity or inmate guard relations from a former inmate who is now, a productive member of society. So I've just been doing, of course, podcasts, and I have a radio show called the U-Turn Show now, where I feature people like myself. Actually,
U-Turn Show?
Yeah, the U-Turn Show, 106.9 in Greenville. It's also streamed live on Facebook, Awesome Radio, or Taylor House Publishing. You can go to my site.
Yeah, we have to get the links to that in the show description. Say, this brother right here, I know he's been through something. I know he has a testimony. So to me, that makes it even more powerful.
Certainly, thank you, man. Certainly, thank you, Brother Lloyd.
So how do we get in touch with you if we need to so viewers and listeners out there listening to this conversation, very inspiring conversation, and I want to know, and they want to know how to reach out to you. How do they do just that?
Well, I'm a very direct person. I don't have a lot of filters. So the main way, directly is through via phone. My contact is 919-587-7782. That's directly to my cellular phone. But I also, once again, if you do like the electronic measures, I do have a website, www.taylorhousepublishing.com, where all of my services, all of my works, all of my books, all of some of the things that I do are highlighted on those, my outreach to the community. So if you do want to go to the website and find out more about me, what I do in the community, you can certainly go to the website, www.taylorhousepublishing.com, or you can email me at taylorpublishinghouse@gmail.com as well. Of course, I'm on Facebook, Richard Taylor, and Instagram, Rich True Life. All of those platforms and avenues are a way to reach me. But once again, I'm kind of old school, so I like to break. So the best way is, once again, 919-587-7782.
And I'll leave those links and also the phone number in the show description, and so that if you want to get a hold of him, you can definitely do just that. Is there any other thing that you wanted to say before we close out?
No, I just want to once again thank you. I thank you for having me on this show, on this platform, and I thank you for the work that you are doing as well. And once again, inspiring others and bringing, information to the public. But I just certainly enjoyed this experience, and hopefully we can do it again in the future.
Oh, definitely will, man. I mean, I want to definitely keep on track of your journey. I'm glad that we're now friends on Facebook, and I want to definitely keep up with you. And I may have some customers that come your way who need to get their book written, and and they need someone that they can trust that's going to, who has that depth. I think it's important. So yeah, man, I see good things happening from you. You have a testimony, and to know that it ends on a good path. One thing that I say, my prayer is, it may not have been, the best start, but it's going to end good. It's going to end real good. Yeah. So I see that happening for you, that it's going to be might start off a little bit rocky, but it's going to have a good ending, Yeah. So that was the episode. Thank you for joining me, Richard, man. And I am looking forward to many more conversations with you as you grow your brand, your company. I see it all for you, man, because I see it in your eyes that you got it now. The light bulb has went off. I see it so bright in your eyes.
Yes.
So, all right, man. All right. Thank you for joining the show this week, and join us next week again for another great episode of What's Up with DJ.